The implementation of urban redevelopment plans in Youngstown, Ohio, demonstrates the economic and social significance of urban renewal with the lasting effects and costs of deindustrialization, as well as the unprecedented planning approach taken. Like many Midwestern cities among the Rust Belt, Youngstown, Ohio was once a booming industrial center. With a growing population of almost 170,000 and a strong industry-based economy, Youngstown was the third largest American steel producer seen by 1950. Over the next few decades, a combination of events would lead to the deindustrialization and collapse of Youngstown's economy. Out of work, tens of thousands would depart from the city, leaving behind a decaying corpse riddled with crime, blight, and abandonment. Youngstown's future looked bleak until 2002, when city planners began a conversation of how they could change Youngstown in an unprecedented way. September 19, 1977, also known as Black Monday, is the historical marker of dramatic deindustrialization and population loss in Youngstown. Youngstown Sheet and Tube Company shut down its Campbell Works, triggering closures of several other plants over the next 5 years. Around 50,000 jobs were lost in the steel industry during this period, leading to heightened unemployment rates and extreme population loss. Although Black Monday historically marks the beginning of decline, the steel industry experienced significant change and disinvestment before 1977. Throughout the 50s and 60s, steel production technology, economics, and scale were evolving. Companies were losing interest in productivity in this changing climate and began to invest in other industries. By 1969, all the mills in Youngstown were owned by outside corporations, which had negative effects on investments in the companies. Lykes Corporation bought out Youngstown Sheet and Tube Company, the last locally owned mill. With reinvestment out of the picture, corporations that owned the steel mills profited off of the remainder of production until decay eventually took over. Youngstown Sheet and Tube closed the Briar Hill Works. Between 1982 and 1987, Youngstown lost 40,000 more jobs due to mill closures. After failed attempts at preserving Jenny, the main furnace at the Briar Hill Works, it was torn down in early 1997. Parts were shipped across the country to modern steel industries, and steel was melted down to be reused again. The image of the barren site resembles little of the history and people this place once stood for. The collapse of the steel industry had devastating effects on the economy and social order of Youngstown. The city faced an oversized urban infrastructure and abandoned properties, the remnants of suburbanization, deindustrialization, and a severe decline in population. New Republic magazine displayed a dismantling image of Youngstown on the cover of their July 2000 issue, labeling it as the most crooked city in America. Youngstown suffered a fragmentation that shifted the population, elevated racial conflicts, and concentrated poverty within the inner city. The prospect of revitalization seemed impossible in this state of decay and abandonment. Urban decay and abandonment did not only affect Youngstown economically, but also socially. Deindustrialization has left a lasting impression on many Rust Belt communities like Youngstown. A report from MIT claims that lack of civic engagement, inadequate governing capacity, and a collectively negative mindset plague former industrial hubs and prevent them from moving forward. Between 1950 and 2010, Youngstown suffered a 60.2 population decrease, which generated devastating effects in the community. Closures of steel mills drove up unemployment rates. Former employees lost homes, pensions, and healthcare resources. Families had no source of income, and neither did the city. The Youngstown community had lost its source of income, taxes. Without this revenue, the city was forced to cut back on local services. Neighborhoods were left to defend themselves as police and firemen could not respond to crime and arson. Landscapes were unkempt and overgrown, decreasing curb appeal. Properties were abandoned due to foreclosures or poor property values, and the image of Youngstown as a failed American city only escalated. Youngstown lost the essential resources that kept the city functioning well: investment and jobs. The community needed to rebuild its identity to overcome the negative image that had taken deep roots. Redefining the community would help Youngstown recover from decades of crime, poverty, and abandonment. Urban decay was a constant and demoralizing reminder of Youngstown's decline. 2001 marked the beginning of changing attitudes and actions surrounding Youngstown's future. For the first time since 1974, planners and city officials started a conversation about a proactive approach in defining Youngstown as a smaller city and enhancing the quality of life for its citizens. Community engagement and civic education were a crucial part of the planning process. This began at a public meeting at the Stambaugh Auditorium that over 1,400 participants attended. In 2002, through a visioning process involving consultants, community leaders, and various community organizations, Youngstown shaped a new future. This vision accepted a shrinking city and called for actions against urban decay, racism, and issues with public safety. Implementations of this vision and plan to fix its broken windows included a general step of making each neighborhood cleaner, greener, better planned, and organized. Youngstown 2010 was a decline-oriented plan, meaning that instead of planning for growth, planners would work to right-size the city to current population levels and plan for a future population decline, while also maintaining good quality of life for remaining residents. This type of planning required a notable shift from growth-oriented planning rooted in American planning practices. Policies in the plan support urban contraction and consolidating infrastructure, regeneration of stable neighborhoods, and reshaping vacant lots into green space. One organization, the Youngstown Neighborhood Development Corporation, or YNDC, was founded to focus public and private resources towards regenerating neighborhoods and vacant lots in an effort to aid implementation of the comprehensive plan. The corporation aims to transform neighborhoods into meaningful places where people invest time, money, and energy. One of YNDC's projects was restoring the historic neighborhood of Idora. Between 2010 and 2016, YNDC aided the city in renovating and selling 35 homes, repairing 88 others, and bringing the occupancy rate of Idora from 75% up to 93%. Ian Beniston, executive director, says the organization's efforts will improve the quality of life for people living there, but realizes the reality of a lack of resources and jobs are still challenges for attracting residents. While Youngstown, in partnership with YNDC, has made a significant difference in the city, they have not completely followed through with the implementation of the comprehensive plan. Youngstown released the Youngstown Redevelopment Code in 2013, 8 years after the comprehensive plan was unveiled. It showed little progress in land use changes the 2005 plan called for. Vacant and residential parcels were to be rezoned, but by 2013, only 2.6 of parcels had been rezoned. Some of the industrial land that was to be turned into green industrial land was realized, but the rest remained under the previous zoning. Since the creation of Youngstown 2010, it was unclear whether the practice of shrinking would contribute to everything the city promised, like economic development in the city, especially with limited resources available. The Youngstown 2021 Annual Action Plan, or AAP, calls out the Youngstown Business Incubator and Flying High Incorporation for having successful workforce development programs, which facilitate high-value businesses. However, the demand for work is so high in Youngstown that these companies' services are not nearly adequate enough. The AAP also claims that small businesses lack the connections, capital, and skill sets required to sustain their ventures. Even programs like the Ohio Enterprise Zone program that help local businesses with tax exemptions are not enough to keep businesses afloat. Despite forceful and well-intentioned efforts, businesses, neighborhoods, community organizations, and the Youngstown government still struggle to succeed in this post-industrial town. The city is in need of an industry to support economic development and civic engagement to clear the negative mindset of residents and the nation. Youngstown may one day thrive again like it once did in the days before Black Monday, but we can see that deindustrialization has long-term economic and social costs that plague the city long after the process has begun. The implementation of urban redevelopment plans in Youngstown, Ohio, demonstrates the economic and social significance of urban renewal. The lasting impacts of deindustrialization in Youngstown forced city planners and officials to take on the challenge of shrinking intelligently. This shrinking approach is relevant in the planning field today and could be applied in cities similar to Youngstown that are still struggling with the economic and social results of a post-industrial world.